left in the boat with the demise of Kvasir, how he was murdered by the dwarves Fjalar and Galar, and they mixed his blood with honey and water and yeast and stored it away for eons, and thus the Mead of poetry was born, sometimes called the Mead of inspiration. It was the idea of the dwarves in their wickedness and their fondness for one another that they would sit on the Mead of poetry for the rest of their days, consuming little by little, and therefore entering into a life of crime that was a little smarter executed. They figured that they would be able to continue the things that they like to do, being one step ahead, wiser, because of the Mead of poetry. So they years went on, and they befriended a giant named Gilling, and Gilling was a jovial fellow. There are the Hrimthurs giants are often the enemies of mankind. This was not one of them, and so Gilling and his wife went to have supper with Fjalar and Galar at their cave, and after a while, Fjalar and Galar said, well, you know, why don't we go out and catch some halibut and catch some salmon, and we'll have some dinner. And Gilling expressed trepidation, saying, well, I am from the mountains of Jotunheim, and we have no substantial, we have streams and creeks and rivers and such, but so I've never learned to swim. And they said, well, it's not going to be a problem. We're in a boat. We'll all three be together. We'll row. So they left Gilling's wife at the cave, and Gilling and Fjalar and Galar went out to the deepest part of the ocean and began to fish. And for whatever reason, Fjalar and Galar upended their boat. They capsized it and drowned Gilling. They watched him die and drown, and they crawled up upon the boat, righted it again, and rowed their way back for kicks, for fun. And so they get back, and Gilling's wife inquires, where's my husband? And they said, oh, it's a terrible accident that's happened. He stood up in the boat. We told him not to, and he fell over, and there's nothing we could do. We thought, we're just little guys. He thought he'd pull us under. And so then they went about to making dinner and doing their normal stuff, and his wife began to cry. Gilling's wife began to shed tears, so much tears that it began to get on the dwarves' nerves. And they're saying, well, this is really unpleasant. We're going to be trying to eat dinner. We're going to have to listen to all this shit going on. And at this point, the tears were collecting in the bottom of the cave and running up past the dwarves' ankles. And you think, this is not going to work out for us. So Fjalar and Galar put their heads together, and Fjalar said, well, Mrs. Gilling, maybe if we step outside, I could show you as the moon is lighting the water, and you may see where poor Gilling met his end, and perhaps find some comfort. Maybe we will have a little service for him. Would you like that? Yes, she would like that. So they stepped out of the surf splash cave, and they're looking out over the water lit with the moonlight, saying, just about there, if you come and stand right here, you can see exactly where. So she comes and stands here, and he says, well, actually about an inch over that way. So she goes an inch over that way, and it's like, maybe just a little bit forward. Okay, perfect. And then Galar dropped a millstone on her head, crushing it and murdering her, thus ending the wailing and the tears and all of that. So the married dwarves went on their evil way, doing their evil things, and the son of Gilling was a Jotun named Suttung, and Suttung was of higher caliber than his father. He searched for his missing father, and his search led him to the cave of Fjalar and Galar. So he goes and he questions them, and doesn't like their answers, even though they are incredibly more wise at this point. So he says, well, look, let me stay the night. I'll go out and I'll catch us some halibut or some salmon, and we'll eat, and I'll leave in the morning. So the three beings, one Jotun and two dwarves, go out on the boat again, and they reach a point where the tide has retreated on a set of rocks that's quite far from the shore, and Sutting insists that they dock there. And as they do, he kicks the dwarves out onto the rock and moves the boat back out of their reach, and the tide is coming in. So he says, I've deduced that you have murdered my father, so now I'm getting my just revenge on you. You're going to drown, and I'm going to sit here and watch it. So they pleaded with him and begged for mercy. And finally, on their last effort, when the water was up to their shoulders, they said, wait, we have something very valuable that we have hidden away that we will trade in exchange for our lives. So Sutting listened to them, and Sutting liked Mead, and Sutting had heard a tale of this Mead of poetry that was hidden away somewhere over years and years. So he was curious about it. So he scooped them back in the boat, and they returned to their cave, and the exchange was made. The wicked dwarves got their lives, and Sutting got the 3 containers of mead, of the Odorir. So Sutting spirited it home to his mountain place in Jotunheim, and he hides the mead deep within a cave 9 miles under the earth, and has his daughter Gunnlod to guard over it and to watch her. And her only function and her only task in life was to watch over this mead. And there it sat for aeons again. So Aritherger, I don't know if you've seen, he has a YouTube channel, yeah. And he's actually an archaeologist from Portugal, but he's pretty learned in Norse studies, and he mentioned that the names Fjalar and Galar are cognate for Screamer and for Deceiver and Screamer, which are names that Loki and Odin have gone by. So it's not out of reach to say that it's the remnant of an older myth where Odin betrays Kvasir and to get the mead of poetry. Anyway, that's speculation. So back around to where, okay, so the mead is hidden under the mountain in the care of Gunnlod. So Odin periodically would leave Asgard and wander the worlds, and when he did so, he would do in disguise. He would don a wide brim hat or a cloak and put all of his finery away, so he would appear as a beggar. And as he wandered, he came across the border to Jotunheim and observed that there were 9 thralls in a field with scythes cutting crops, cutting wheat and barley. And they were struggling with it. Their scythes were dull. And so he said, I'm a traveler, and if you give me a little bit of your bread and cheese, maybe a little bit of what you have to drink, I'll sharpen your scythes. I have a really good whetstone. So he sharpened one up, and it was so sharp that they all hastened to have their scythes sharpened as well. Now Odin to be in his presence is to be intoxicated. His mind and his madness has an effect on human beings which can lead some to frenzy or to madness. So he begins to stoke them up and saying, well, I can sharpen yours, I can sharpen yours. They all are standing in line, they all like it. He's getting them so sharp, and then he's whipping them into a frenzy, telling them, well, I don't really need this whetstone, so one of you can have it if you can catch it. And he throws it into the air, and they, with their 9 sharpened scythes, cut each other's throat in their hastiness to catch it. So Odin catches it and walks up on his way with the 9 dead thralls at his feet. So he comes upon a house with a door. He knocks and asks if he can stay the night in the barn. The owner of the house was a Jotun named Suttung, and he says, yes, you can stay in the barn, but don't expect anything for dinner because all of my workers have been killed. I have so much work to do, and I don't think I will ever accomplish it before the season's out. So Odin says, well, my name is Bolverka. Bolverka is Old Norse for evildoer, but I guess Suttung did not know that. He says, I can do the work of 9 thralls. I may look like an old beggar, but you'd be very surprised. And if I am able to get all of your fields taken care of, then maybe you could get me a sip of the mead of poetry. Okay, so I said the name wrong. It was Baugi. It's not Sutung. I said it was Sutung. It was Baugi that opened the door. Baugi is Sutung's brother. So he says, I want you to get me in exchange for my labor a sip of the mead of poetry that your brother Sutung has hidden. Apologies. So he says, well, I don't think you're going to be able to do the work, first of all, but we'll see when it comes down to it. So Odin, as Bolverker, stayed and worked for the season and was able to do the work of the 9 thralls and was able to keep his word, to which he went to Baugi and said, Baugi, I've kept my word. Now will you please go to your brother and implore that I may have a sip of the mead of poetry. So Baugi goes to his brother Sutung and tells him a story, and Sutung tells him to get the hell out of here. He has made no deal with no wanderer. Why don't you go and make something of your life? Leave me to mine. So Baugi's pissed off, and he tells Odin or Bolverker the situation, and they say, well, we have to get the mead by trickery then. So there was an auger called Ratai that they used to drill into the cave down into the earth in order to reach the cavern where they believed the mead was. And this is kind of a strange story because it talks of 3 times where they have to drill the auger into the rock, and where Baugi tells Odin, okay, there's a hole now, and Odin gets down and blows into the rock and chips go back into his face. So there is studies and much is made that this is somewhat homoerotic, but at any rate, he finally on the 3rd time goes through, makes penetration to the capsule where the mead is, and Odin quickly turns himself into a snake and slithers into the hole. So Baugi, realizing that he's been played, takes the auger and attempts to stab and kill Odin through the little hole there. He's unsuccessful, but the way out is closed to Odin. So Odin, as the snake, is now in the cavern with Gunnlod the Jotun, and he, through magic, shapeshifts into a young man. And now his visage is that closer to what he was when he was a younger person. He does not have the beggar exterior. So Gunnlod, being tasked with the life service of watching mead in bottles, is very happy to see someone young and attractive and someone to spend time with her. So Odin and Gunnlod pitch woo and make love and spend 3 days together. And by this time, they've been completely won over, according to the other, by each other's presence, and they love one another. So Odin asks, well, I really would like a sip of the mead that you're guarding. And Gunnlod says, okay. So Odin takes a sip of the first one and empties it, takes a sip of the second one and drains it, and takes a sip of the third one and drains it, and then shapeshifts into an eagle and flies away up the cave to the exit. So Gunnlod's been played, she's very upset, and she wails, and it is heard by Sutung, who is also a great sorcerer, and he himself changes into an eagle as well. So he's on hot pursuit of Odin, who is full of mead in his eagle form. Now, so the gods see what's happening, and they begin to light fires, and they begin to wait in anticipation. But because Odin has so much mead in his belly, it's weighing him down. And he turns around, and he sees that Sutung is gaining on him. So Odin is fettered by fear, and he purges his cloaca. Now, do I need to explain what that is?
No.
Yes.
Not at all.
Well,
Bird hole.
so birds
The 7th beer.
don't have a... It all comes out the same way with the birds. So he was able to retain the majority of the beer, but he shat some of it all across Midgard. So he makes his way back to Asgard, and they light their fires, and they're able to repel Sutung and actually burn his wings, bring him to the ground, and they kill him much like they did with Diatzi, Skavi's father. And they had a great big vat, which Odin then expectorated the rest of the mead, and that became the mead of poetry. That's how the Aesir won it back. However, the amount of mead that was purged from his cloaca over Midgard ended up
I'm going to use that label.
accessible to humans. And this is who we have to blame for bad artists and poets and bad music, because it was tainted. If he would have vomited it, they would have the good stuff, but because he did not, they did not.
Oh, man.
So we have that part of the meat of poetry to blame for those earworms in your ear.
Who rides from bridge to our globes tonight?